first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public who has a comment for the board? Anybody? Seeing nobody, we will move on. Okay, so attendance. We have a couple of new faces here. So if you could say your name, your title, and the agency that you're with, that would be great. So to get started, Ram. Bob Berry.
Bob Berry, DAS Spitz, lead the database team.
Joe
Sorry,
Campbell.
sorry,
Oh.
Katie. I meant to say President, Office of Higher Education.
Thank you. Joe Campbell.
Yep. This is Joe Campbell. I am with the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System.
Patrick Flaherty.
I'm here, Department of Labor.
Scott Gall.
I'm here, Chief Data Officer, Office Policy Management.
Michael Girolamo.
Present, Michael Girolamo, Chief Data and Quality Officer for Department of Mental Health and Addiction.
Ajit Gopalakrishnan. Lauren Jorgensen.
Good morning. I'm from UConn and I'm the Director of Institutional Research.
Rose Kelly.
Rose Kelly, I'm the Interim Director of HMIS Data and Strategic Analysis with CCH.
Jan Keeney.
I am here, Senior Associate for Decision Support for the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities.
Julie Besai, she's designee for Eileen.
Hi, Julie Besai, Education Consultant, standing in.
Fred North.
Fred North, DCF, Program Director for Data Reporting and Evaluation.
Maura Preventure.
Morning, Maura Preventure. I am the Vice President of Research with the Connecticut Conference of Independent College.
Susan Smith.
Good morning, Susan Smith, Department of Social Services.
And Kelly Orts, designee for Brian Sperry.
Good morning. I'm here on behalf of Brian Sperry with the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division.
Okay, awesome. Welcome, everybody. We definitely have a quorum. So thanks, everyone. The next item on the agenda is approval of proposed bylaws. Is there someone to make a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, so we sent you an updated draft of the proposed bylaws following our last meeting in May. I did not receive any additional feedback from folks, so I just wanted to open it up to see if there's any discussion on the proposed bylaws.
I just want to thank you for time to review it. Thank you very much.
Of course. So seeing no discussion, we will do a voice vote. If there are any no's, then we will do a roll call vote. So all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Okay, seeing none, the bylaws have been passed. So we will share that with all of you. It will be uploaded to our website, and we will continue to follow the guidelines with which we have decided to run the meetings with. So thank you all for your feedback and contributions to this process. This is very exciting. So thank you. The next item on the agenda is looking at policy and procedures. So we sent an updated draft of the data matching process document. This is the changes that you will have seen. We sent it to you all last Thursday. So gave you the week to review and provide feedback. We didn't receive any, but the changes that were in the data matching process reflect the feedback that we received during the dry run process. So we would like to approve the data matching process. So we'll hopefully get a motion to move this forward, and then we can have discussion about the process. Is there a motion?
Scott, I'll move. So moved.
Second?
I will second.
Great, thank you. Okay, so opening it up to discussion. If there's new or additional feedback or any thoughts, please, this is an opportunity to discuss this process. Jan?
Hi. Yes, I had a chance to look at this yesterday. Our legal department has not had a chance to look at it yet, but I do have some comments that I don't know if we want to take up time during the meeting to discuss them, or if I should just send them. I need to share my own comments with internally and then provide combined comments back from legal and myself. But I can also raise points now, or I could just send them to you. I don't know what you prefer.
If other folks have comments that they also need to share but haven't shared them with us yet, we can save that and we can follow up after the meeting. And then we can have a discussion, I guess, at the next meeting.
Just confused then. Yeah, I'm just confused then. I mean, I think we have a motion on the floor. And if we're looking to pass it, I think, and people have questions, I think we should move forward and maybe ask those questions now, or we can table it, whichever is more convenient for the group.
So one thing I do want to add about the process is that we want to encourage everyone to vote to pass this, because it will allow us to conduct another dry run so that we can further identify gaps and improve this process. So, this is constantly a work in process, but if we cannot move forward with the document, then it delays our ability to conduct those dry runs.
Let me add to 2 points from seconding both what Ram and Katie were saying. So one, I think it would help, Jan, if you're willing to go through any of the questions, and anyone else like to have the discussion. Now, sorry, I don't know, my mic is weird. I think the other thing, like to reinforce what Katie is saying, it helps with the driver, but it helps also equally importantly, or more importantly, with the actual transmission of data. Because without, we've had this process in circulation for, some time now, since last year, I think, and have not had, I think, huge changes to it. But I'd be much more comfortable if we have a process in place, and then this board has the ability to, modify and revise that process over time. If there's questions or things that we see changing, we go through, actual transmission of data. We go through the transmission of data with fake data through the dry runs, and we see like, oh, there's something we want to change. But, I would be more comfortable with a process in place than in the absence of having a process. I think that's a tough scenario to be in. But Jan, I don't know if you're comfortable, willing to share the feedback or comments. That would be, I think, helpful for the group to discuss. But without knowing, what those are, it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
And anyone else? I don't think like Katie said, I don't think we received other feedback or comments on it since essentially last year.
Sure. Well, there were some changes between the last version that we provided comments on and this one. There are a number of changes that I think are important. So that's why I need to go back to have legal review. But I'm happy to share you some of the things that I've, leaving aside tiny editing kind of things. I'm happy to go into those now. So I can do that if now's the right time. And I think you are inviting me to do so. But I know Rob said there was a motion on the table, so I don't want to get in the way of that. What?
I think it would be the appropriate time to have that discussion now.
Okay. So a question, number 5 in the document, it says data integration hub creates a folder in SFTP for each agency that is named with the request and the request number. I just wanted to understand that's like the connection, the folder, the shared folder is made, and then there's a subfolder within that per each request. Is that how it was planning to be done? I just wanted to understand that. Or is it a new sort of folder between the agencies for every request? That's less discussion and more just to trying to understand it.
I can answer this. So
Sure.
it'll be the same login that you always go onto, the same site. It'll only be connected to DOL, but instead of it being like a blank page from now on, you'll see a folder that says this is the request number. So it's a little more of an indication that you're on the right site. This is where you should drop it. It's not changing the connections at all. It's just a visual cue. Here you
Okay.
are.
That's why I was just want to make sure I understood that. So great. The next question is, you know, when we began this eons ago, DOL set up the connections, but I think DAS is now kind of doing IT for all main executive agencies, including DOL. So who's the actual administrator behind the Axway connection? Is it DOL setting up these connections, or is it DAS?
Defer to Bob or Patrick, but it's the same. It actually has not changed. DOL sets up the connections. DS provides enterprise support for the application, but DOL administers this directly.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any, well, but some DOL staff are DAS staff now, as I understand it. So I'm trying to, I want to.
The case. I don't think that's the case, and you know, Bob, you can.
Right. Yeah, that's so the infrastructure support for Axway and SFTP and stuff is the same, was always in bits. I don't think any of the people from DOL, because they're focusing more on the application, I think they stayed in DOL.
Okay. All right, so if I'm hearing you correctly, the actual, even though DOL might be setting up the folder, DAS bits is the actual administrator behind Axway. So in terms of the people way down deep who might have access, not that they should, and they probably signed different agreements about it, and they, you know, administrators have access to a lot of stuff. So I'm not trying to say that's wrong. I'm just trying to be clear in terms of my understanding. It's the DAS administrators who would have that sort of underlying ability to see everything, right?
I know they're administrating the infrastructure portion. I'm not as familiar with Axway, and I'll find that out for you, Jan. But I'm not as familiar to know if that does give them access to the thing. You know,
that would be really great to understand. If you could find out, that would be super helpful.
And I could just send the answer via email to this group after I get back from it. So
thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Okay. So number 9 states, upon receiving the transmitted matching data via SFTP, subject to the P20 Win data security policy from each participating agency, the data integration hub loads each data set to the data letter project. I don't know what the P20 Win data security policy is. I didn't think we had one. Do we have one? And if we do, can somebody send it to me?
It is linked in the data matching document, but we can share it again.
There's no, hang on, let me try it.
I think the link's not there because we had an issue with our website, but we'll put the link in the chat here.
You know what? I apologize. I've just never seen this before.
It works.
Okay, my apologies. It's there. I see it. Thank you. Okay. I'm trying to be quick. I know you have a lot to cover, and I appreciate everybody's patience. So number 13 talks about, it says the data integration hub details the results of the match using the data matching report form and emails the data recipient. The data recipient must confirm the email acceptance of the match rates. So I think I'm just thinking logistically, I don't know a recipient that would know if the match was right without input from the the participating agencies. So maybe I'm thinking, I can understand why you might want the recipient to say, yep, I'm ready to go. But I'm thinking that the participating agencies also need to be like, yeah, that makes sense based upon what we're expecting with our data set. Because that's how we've done it in the past. Generally, Liam, he does the match and he emails everybody and then we kind of like from higher ed, we're like, okay, yeah, that looks like approximately the right number of community college students you might have in a match. You might approximately, I'm just thinking you might want to add the participating agencies into that conversation.
So during the dry run, we did include the participating agencies, and everybody is busy, and there was a pretty significant delay in getting feedback from folks. But when we were discussing this process with Liam, this language, he said, was just going back to the way it always used to be, which was the data recipient oftentimes was a participating agency who was the data recipient, which would make sense.
Right, but if it's not, let's say it's Yale or cross-sector consulting, or I don't know. I'm just thinking if you leave it only up to the data recipient, it might not maximize the benefit of that particular process, but.
Well, everybody's included in that email, so it's the data recipient plus all of the participating agencies. So there's time for there to be a discussion and to receive feedback from the participating agencies, but since it's the recipient who will have to rely on the match, it made sense to have them be the ultimate approval.
Okay. Okay.
Real quick before we leave that, though, I would then just offer so the first sentence in 13, data integration hub documents results of the match using data matching report form and emails the data recipient and participating agencies, period. And then the data recipient must confirm acceptance. Does that make sense? Just add and participating agencies to the email.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. I'm just trying to skim through. I have some small things, and like I said, I'll send stuff to you, but I'm trying to highlight the things for discussion that might be more relevant. Let's see. Number 16. The hub provides written confirmation of deletion of the matching data to OPM. I just think the participating agencies should know that happened too. So whether or not OPM then forwards that information on to the participating agencies or DOL informs everybody, I think the agencies also need to know that matching data has been deleted and when. And I think those are the I have some small things, but those are the bigger things that I had questions about. I don't know, maybe only one. I don't know. I mean, I didn't get a chance to look at it until yesterday, so maybe others also haven't had a chance yet.
This is Fred. I only had one other thing. I thought that there had been a requirement to use a common naming convention for the matching and analytic files, and I didn't see that here, although maybe I've just missed it, but I thought that was a good idea. I would think that would be helpful, so.
I can answer that one too. So it's in our data governance manual, but when we're going to create a checklist off of this process document once it's approved, on that checklist, that's where that would be.
Okay, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be in every place, but it's fine.
And this is Julie Bees. Scott, I'm not sure if this is where there's any discussion about what I'm calling oversharing of data back to the requesters. For any non-matched children or data sets.
I think that is a good, we're going to have that as the next discussion topic because it's similar but separate from this, although.
Okay, perfect.
I don't want to preclude discussion on something that folks want to bring up.
That's great. If it makes sense in the next one, that's great.
We were hoping to, again, in the vein of being able to have policies rather than not having policies, to be able to take this document, approve it. If there's revisions or clarification needs to come in the future, we can make those changes. I think so far, if there's other questions we've heard, maybe we can add in a couple places like and participating agencies, but I don't know if there's other concerns with the document with those amendments to it to just clarify that. And I think the question on the recipient approving the match rates, like it's what we're putting here is that's what's required to approve it. It does not preclude communication between the data recipient, the data integration hub, the other agencies to make sure that they're achieving the best match rate. It's just in practice, we found requiring the written confirmation from multiple agencies is something that took a large, unexpectedly long amount of time. We had to actually abandon it for a couple of the requests in the dry run, and that just leaves people's data exposed for a longer period of time than seems necessary. But again, nothing precludes the active and frequent communication between the requesters, the agencies, data integration hub, et cetera, to go and improve the match rates. We're just saying this is what's required to confirm the matches. Essentially, the recipient's comfort with it. They're the ones getting the data.
Can I just ask one clarification? This is Ajit. I'm not able to pull up the document right in front of me at the moment, but could we just review the provision of the analytic file to the requester? My understanding from reviewing the document is that it goes from the participating agency to the requester directly. I believe that the site that will be used for that is the same SFTP portal administered by DAS, but just want to be sure how that, can you just review how the transmittal to the requester will work?
Yeah, I can cover that. And this is an area where I think like similar to what Julie's asking about, probably further future clarification is required. What it says here is fairly minimal, that it's transferred, I can't find the section. It's transferred using SFTP, and what we've been doing with the dry run is testing out that works, and we've been using the portal administered by DOL for that. But I know that that's something that's, we need to detail that out a little further, probably.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I think also knowing who would have access. To me, it would be just but I'm not sure. That's, I think, would be good to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in to add on to Ajit's point. CSCU is establishing a process where, because CSCU owns its own data, we're in control of its handling and its usage. We're establishing an Axway a process where we will be able to send out our own data and make sure the sending out of our own information is secure. So for the process Ajit just mentioned, there's two steps, right? So each agency during a particular data request sends their data to DOL to be matched in the matching process, and all the data goes to DOL for that. The second step is the movement of the analytic data, which I think is what Ajit was referring to, which then goes directly from the participating agency to the recipient agency, which may be an agency or might be Yale or might be somebody outside of the system. It doesn't go through DOL. So in that instance, CSCU is setting up our own pathways for that particular process. There won't be any change on anybody else's part. It'll just be a matter of picking our file up from our connection. So that's something it's not in this particular process. There's nothing in our process that says that can't be the case, because it's actually been the case that we've had from the very beginning of how data is flown anyway. It's just, it's going to be the same security, it's Axway, it's the same thing, just be administered by us. And it's our data. We're not asking anybody else to put their data through our folder. It's our data.
I think we should discuss that too. And Jen, you're right. I am talking about that process, but I'm also looking at it from the end requester's perspective. If we have 5 agencies, 6 agencies in a request, and we make the requester go to 6 different places to get analytic data sets, that doesn't seem efficient to me either. Because then it's like, we're just making it super cumbersome for the requester. So I think it is worth a discussion of how to make it efficient for the end user, because after all, that's the customer we're trying to reach here.
Well, and if you think about it, and again, I don't know how exactly DOL is going to lay out the folders, but the request, whoever the recipient is, I'm picking on Yale. Let's just say it's Yale, and they're getting data from 3 agencies. They're going to have to go to 3 agencies' folders to pick them up anyway. And this is also not something that's a collaborative decision. This is what CSCU is doing. So it's something, and maybe, because the other agencies are executive agencies, all run by DAS in terms of IT. CSCU is not. We may be a different animal in this case. But I know there's a meeting to talk about this further with OPM and DOL tomorrow, so happy to have follow-on conversations.
Just in the interest of keeping us on the agenda, I'm going to make a motion to table the voting on this, assuming I'm following the parliamentary procedures correctly. But I don't hear objections that there's any gaping holes in the process. I hear there's some areas for clarification to indicate where the participating agencies, some areas to figure out the level of access for state IT. And I do want to affirm the one point that Bob had made earlier, that has not changed in the past decade, as far as I know, that's the same as it has always been. But the clarification is important and necessary, I think, so that folks understand that. But I would just put on the table the motion to table this, and we can gather further comments and then discuss it at the next data governing board meeting, and then hopefully pass the process, unless no one wants to second that motion to table.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Ron,
let me
Ajit,
actually
go
try
ahead.
to throw out one. Let me just try to throw out one thing. I mean, I know we did a dry run before, and I know you want to do a second dry run. Would it help to approve this document for dry run purposes so that you can at least do a dry run?
I would say, yeah, I would like to approve this document so that we can do a dry run and have policies again for the actual data in transmission. But because the process the bylaws we just approved, we have to have unanimity. And my sense is that we will not have that today from the members present. But if folks are willing, then we can put back on the table the motion to vote for it. So, I mean, again, my preference would be that we're voting it, and I'm not sure that is gonna, I'm not sure we're gonna get everyone on board. The parliamentary procedure part, I'm a little opaque on, so if someone has to put it back on the table to vote for it, that's fine by me. So, yeah, my preference is we approve this. So.
I guess the question is, I mean, in order to have that vote, I mean, do we have unanimity or not? I mean, if people aren't comfortable with voting on it, they should just say they're not comfortable. They don't have to necessarily say how they would vote or whether they would approve or not. But if they're not comfortable voting in this meeting, I mean, I guess that supports the second motion of tabling.
I'll stick my neck out. I'm not comfortable voting on it in this meeting. But also, I don't know that you have to wait in a dry run for this. You could conduct a dry run and follow all this procedure without it being approved. But two cents.
I think based on that, I think we I don't know if someone wants to make the motion to vote, but I think tabling it makes sense. I think that's great. We can do the dry run. We did the first dry run without the policies and procedures. It is helpful to have that, and more importantly, again, with the actual transmission of data. So the absence of these procedures creates some risk for all parties involved.
And then just the only thing that I would just add, is that for just the next meeting, if we have concerns, we have a month to be able to address this, assuming, we do table this. If we just respond and move it forward, I would greatly appreciate that. So I think there's a motion to table. I would call the question, and
Who seconded it?
I seconded it.
Okay. Okay. I believe we need to do a roll call vote for tabling this. So, Ram,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Ajit,
Aye.
Lauren,
Aye.
Rose.
I'm not comfortable voting.
Okay, gonna abstain. Jan,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Maura,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Kelly.
I'll abstain.
Okay, so we have tabled this. If you have further feedback, please share it with us. That would be helpful. Thank you. Moving on. The next item is the Data Privacy Protection and Equity Impact Assessment Tool. We've shared this with you a few times now over the last couple of months. I don't believe we plan to vote to formalize the process, but what I would recommend and propose is that agencies in an upcoming data request pilot the tool. So we have quite a few data requests that are incoming, and we do not need to make the decision now, but it would be great if folks could let me know if they would be open to participating in a pilot of this as they review data requests. Are there any thoughts, comments, questions?
Well, one thought, Katie, would be if you could identify a request as it comes through that you think would be a good test for this, that you let everyone who's involved in that request know that opinion of yours. And then, we
I'm
would
happy
certainly
to do that.
And if DOL were part of that, we would take your recommendation seriously.
Okay.
So if you could help us identify a good candidate for this tool, we would be open to that feedback.
Awesome. I can definitely do that.
Yeah, DCF would participate in that too if it's relevant for us. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. That's awesome. I already have a couple in mind, so I will let you know. Okay. Are there any other thoughts, comments about the tool? Okay. Moving right along. Data minimization is another topic we wanted to briefly discuss. We shared the slides from the dry run with everyone, and now, and in some instances, the question of what to do with unmatched data has come up, and so we thought we could take a few minutes, seeing that we're short on time a bit, to address this.
Well, Katie, if it's okay, I'll sort of start on this, and then I know Julie had comments. I saw Jan raised her hand for a sec. So this one, data minimization, an important principle. You only share the data that's absolutely necessary for something. So as few fields, as few elements, as possible for this request. So I think everybody's on board with that. As an approach, this has come up a couple times, I think, in the dry run with a couple of the requests, essentially how to handle the unmatched records. So the process everybody's going through, you're taking a data set from your agency, matching it with data sets from other agencies, and then separating those files, sending the data for matching, and then sending the analytic data over after the matching's been complete. But the questions come up sort of, how are you handling the unmatched records in that process? So if, and I'll put up a slide with this. We put up like a toy example of this just to get folks kind of walking through the idea, where we took, let's say, in this case, SDE had 100 records, and they were matching that with data from OEC on home visiting, a program that's not universal in scope. So I think this is going to come up more often because we have more agencies and more programs that we're getting data for that don't cover the entire population of the state. They're not universal, so they're meeting a small portion of the population. The more we're matching data across programs or services that reach small populations, the more we're going to have this kind of scenario. So hypothetically, you get 100 records from STE, 150 records from OEC, and the match rate is 5%. There's only, limited overlap. It's a small scale program. There's high mobility for young population, or whatever the other reasons are. The matching data is poor quality, or whatever reason is just a hypothetical example. There's a low match rate, so there's 5% of the records match. So there's 5, records that would be part of the analysis for the study, and for whatever reason they don't need the unmatched record. So the question sort of at hand is, like, how many records should the two agencies, OEC and SDE, transfer to the end recipient? And the process we have now is they're transferring both the matched and the unmatched records, because you don't have a way of observing which records were matched from your data set. But at least as I, and hopefully have a solid understanding of the process. But that's, I think our sense of how it works now. Julie, I know this is a real life example that came up for OEC, and you wanted to raise it too, so we talk a little more.
Thank you. No, because I think I had always understood the process, and granted, this is the first time I've done the data match at all, but receiving, that's why we have the fake IDs and we rematch them. For us, it was significant number of data records, so child level data records that are not matched. And one, we know ECIS, the old data is pretty not great. So we're sending over a bunch of data, but it is really personally identifiable, even if the name were out, if it's special needs in a small town, there's so much data there that was never, I just didn't understand that was intended to be shared, because I thought we were doing the data matching. I thought that's what this whole process was, it gets matched behind the scenes. We know which fields did get matched, or can know what fields did get matched, and send over those records. To send over our whole scope of Care for Kids and ECE and for 20 years is a significant ask. And the security of that data after the fact is terrifying for me. So that's where I'm coming from.
I'm going to unshare, and I'll just we're not proposing a solution here. There's nothing, but this is an area where I think we want to make sure we're developing policies and procedures that support the principle of data minimization, that, the process that we just went through covers that. And, if there's, to identify, if this is an issue that resonates with other agencies, if there's means of addressing this, then, we're sort of open to ideas on it, but it seemed like an area that's worth some attention. So, sorry, Jan, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your comments, Julie. It makes an enormous amount of sense. And historically, so let me not speaking. So historically, you're right. People they created an analytic file and then they sent everything on, oversharing. We have not gone back and done a process where after the match, we can take the fake IDs and cut out just the ones that are needed. I think that is actually a marvelous improvement, assuming that the research doesn't need the nulls for some reason. So this might be something that needs to be specified in the request itself. Does the researcher need to know the non-matches for some reason or not? And if not, I would say absolutely less is better, less is more. And I just want to say that the other party, maybe there are others who had this in the dry run series experience, was us, but our situation was entirely different. We didn't match any records because our date of births were different, and so none of our file went through. And since we were kind of doing this whole thing about, well, who are we sharing our analytic data to anyway? I'm like, well, we didn't match anybody, so you don't need our records. And so we didn't share our analytic file because none of them matched for the dry run. But that scenario is very different from matching some versus all. So I personally think that it makes an awful lot of sense to minimize. And I don't know, it would be a change, right, from our general process. But if the request doesn't require the nulls, it probably wouldn't be too hard to take the key. It wouldn't have to be for all the agencies, but DOL could take the match, just take that list of IDs that are going to be in the groups, where a group is John Smith is in 3 agencies. DOL could say, okay, well, here are the fake IDs from your agencies that matched. Please send your analytic data for these 10,000 or these 50 students. That would be a possibility if it worked out. Go ahead, I'll stop.
No, keep going. I just wanted to log two things here, I think. So one, I want to flag a possible issue with that, and then I just blanked on the other thing I was going to say, so now it doesn't matter. The one thing that would open up. So if we share that because this scenario had come up in a couple of places, we started to think through like, all right, how's this going to work? The one thing would open up if you share the matched records back with the agency, it provides information that somebody did match. I know the other thing I was going to say, but somebody did match with another data set. So like we have, child welfare, DMS here. So if you saw, like to use CSU as an example, if CSU, you had a match with DMS and you got back like these 10 records matched with DMS, you would know that those individuals were in, a substance use program or behavioral health or whatever it is. Just the fact that they matched with the other agency's data provides information about some service or program that they're enrolled in that agency may not wish to be disclosing to you. So I think, some of these, like again, universal programs like K-12, everybody's a right to an education. It's a little bit different, but when we start to go into, like homelessness, abuse and neglect cases, just the fact that somebody matched across a different data set is disclosing a lot of information to the other agencies. And if we had to share that, again, we're not proposing a solution, but I think that's the process of sharing the IDs back with the agencies opens up that issue there. So we can think about ways to resolve this, but I want to put on the table that's
Yeah.
one thing that comes. Real quick, the other thing you mentioned, we just put like the simplest case here where there's no comparison or control group or something that they need, some subset of the unmatched records. In the case Julie's talking about, they actually did want a subset of unmatched records as a control group. And I think the way to handle that is specifying that as clearly as possible in the request. So just there's different cases here where you have a control group, you don't have a control group, but this is like the simplest way of thinking about it is if you're not looking for any of the unmatched records. But I think same solution would cover both problems. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think for us, I agree with where it's very clear, but I think some of our data has some of that private information too. And maybe depending on what the data matching is, the program or state agency might say we can't have you seeing who matched. But then they are seeing who matched from our side. And so it really does have a lot of information. And maybe the data request was extravagant for what they're asking for data because it really is identifiable data. So all our other, and we have Care for Kids in there, which is 20,000 kids a year at minimum for those 17, 18 years. So it's a significant amount of data, even just for New Haven County. So the one we're talking about is the New Haven County request. So it just exceeds, I think it feels like it exceeds what was intended by the process.
So in the interest of time, this was really great. But we're definitely going to keep discussing this and hopefully find some or many solutions to it. But thanks for bringing it up. But again, in the interest of time, we still have a lot on the agenda. We're going to skip the final two items in the policy and procedures section. We'll come back to that at the next meeting. We'll move to the data request summary item. So we have quite a few data requests in movement. We even had one submitted this morning. And so we have two folks here who are going to give a quick update on the data requests that they are working on. First up is Jonathan Richter from the Office of Workforce Strategy, and then Julian Hayes, who is a fellow based at the Department of Education, is going to give us a quick update on the work that he's doing.
Great, I will share my screen. Great, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, thanks a lot. So good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you the Office of Workforce Strategies request. My name is Jonathan Richter. I'm a research analyst with the office, and I've been working on this request with our governor's fellow, Billy Wong, over the past couple of months since we've been onboarded in August. So I'd like to start off by sharing this wonderful graphic from the data quality campaign, since it directly relates to our research efforts. Our request is basically dedicated to understanding how individuals navigate through Connecticut's workforce ecosystem. And in this graphic, you can see that the individual, Grace, at the beginning, is making informed career choices based on how prior individuals have navigated throughout the same ecosystem. And in the graphic, she reaches several decision points along her career pathway that helps inform her to the best end goal, end stage of it. And so basically with our P21 request and linking data, we're able to just really map out those same career pathways. And on the next slide, I sort of sketch out how, since our request focuses primarily on individual career pathways, we care about primarily the journeys rather than destinations of an individual. And that allows us to prepare visualizations that can help improve and scale best practices while also informing us on new pathways that haven't been really defined yet. And this is just one example of, State Department of Education's adult ed, and going into the Department of Labor and then into the workforce, or even a new pathway into the workforce. And so there's definitely a lot of combinations here that is possible. But so yeah, that's basically a sketch of it. But we're definitely cognizant of the fact that previous efforts have evaluated certain aspects of the workforce system, such as individual workforce training programs and the performance related to that. However, we intend our request to expand those efforts by matching individuals across workforce training programs and public-private post-secondary programs and CTEX system as well. And we sort of highlighted the previous requests, especially the Department of Labor's Higher Education and Workforce Report Card and requests 27 through 31 as examples of reports primarily focused on the end goals of graduates finding workforce activities at the end, but really not really evaluating how they match how the data sets would match individuals across workforce programs and across public post-secondary and private post-secondary programs. And so by exploring these two important research areas, we can expand on previous data requests and avoid duplicative work. And our first research area of understanding the wage and employment outcomes of participants in workforce training programs has obviously been examined before, but there's value in investigating the relationship between these workforce training programs, CTEC system, and the post-secondary education system as well. And in doing so, we hope to create interactive and publicly available dashboards to help inform decision-making and to have them publicly available for people to view. And for our request, we're obviously focusing on the two major entities that provide rich workforce system data, and that's Department of Labor and State Department of Education. And I will say that although we're requesting quite a lot of programs, we've done a lot of diligent work to create sort of a common library of best indicators for workforce system activities. And that's will be part of our data exhibit that will be attached to our request. And for the education system, we are looking at 4 P21 entities, and again, doing the same thing of going through the data dictionary, picking out the most common indicators, echoing the discussion previously about just less is more, and making sure that we get the most common indicators to sort of match and facilitate the data sharing process. And real quick, there's no real shortage of reasons why evaluating the workforce ecosystem is important. And we really do consider at the Office of Workforce Strategy that it's really a workforce ecosystem of people moving in between in and out of the system. And I think these sort of quick highlights and headlines sort of summarize the importance of doing this work. And they will be, links to these articles will be attached in the appendix of this presentation. And as always, I kind of ran through this really quickly, but this is my contact information, and our governor fellows contact information. And then next week we have a not data governing board meeting. We have a data committee meeting next week on June 8th following the governor's workforce council meeting. So another opportunity to meet up and talk about this important work. So open it to questions, comments. I really apologize going through that quickly. I wanted to make sure I gave the floor back to the board.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was awesome. We will be circulating the completed data request with participating agencies probably on Monday. But are there any comments or questions or thoughts? Okay, if not, then I will turn it over to Julian.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Julian Hayes. I'm a third-year PhD student at Harvard University, focusing on education policy. My research emphasis is workforce development and alternative pathways to the workforce. And then this summer, I'm working with CSDE and DOL, looking at post-secondary outcomes for students who are high school graduates and students who are college graduates. So I'll be able to link up all the data and show what are the trajectories in terms of earnings for student employment over time for high school graduates, for 2-year college graduates, and for 4-year college graduates. So right now, I'm getting familiar with the data, looking at the National Student Clearinghouse data, looking at certificates currently, but I'm hoping to actually expand that analysis to look out at the different degree types that people have, as well as the institution that they graduated from. So again, like in summer, which I had slides, like so nice to organize your thinking when you have a slide in front of you. But looking at post-secondary outcomes for high school graduates, see what industries they wound up in over time. And we have enough data. We can look at like 3 years out, 5 years out, 7 years out, 10 years out for some cohorts, and do that same exact analysis looking at people who graduated from 2-year colleges or with a 2-year degree and a 4-year degree.
Awesome. That is going to be great. Any thoughts, comments, or questions about the work that Julian's doing? Okay, well, thank you for
Katie, I'm just gonna add one thing. Just
Okay.
these are nice like complements to each other too. So I think the work that Julian's doing over the summer and the work that Office of Workforce Strategy are undertaking will be like nice complements about getting a more holistic picture of the way people navigate different career pathways out from education into the many different opportunities in the workforce system. So they're presenting separately, but when they're done, it'll be a nice sort of holistic picture as well.
So this is Joe from the technical high schools. If I could also just add, Julian, the data that we're about to push up to the repository is going to be on credentialing. So we have high school students that get credentialing in CTE areas, their trades or technologies, and we also have data of which ones go on to post-secondary, which ones go into directly into the workforce. It's what we do. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's incredible. Be incredible data to look at.
We'll also share an updated breakdown of the data requests that we have from incoming to in review to active. So we'll share that with everyone following the meeting. We have 4 minutes left. So we have some general updates we want to go through relatively quickly. So, so first is the Data Security Working Group update.
Yes, so Data Security Working Group, we're meeting. We have a draft of the data security questionnaire that's part of that data security policy that we approved, I think, 2 or 3 meetings ago. We're going to be doing a pilot of the data security questionnaire with those members of the Data Security Working Group.
Awesome. The Data Matching Working Group update.
So we've had a couple meetings now. We're really just talking about, at this point, what we want and need out of data matching software and what our current capabilities are. The plans for the upcoming meetings are to look at similarly designed systems or organizations and how they do it and compare and contrast notes.
So we have an executive board meeting on Tuesday, June 20th we'll circulate an agenda with folks in the next week or two. And because it's the June meeting, we are hoping to update the learning agenda. So if you have ideas or questions that you would like to add to the learning agenda, if you have your own respective agency research agenda that we can add to it and highlight, please share that with us, and also touch base with your executive board member and let them know if there are any agenda or any policy questions that should be added to the learning agenda. And now we have a bunch of grant updates.
We'll compress these significantly. So I think the members of the board got an email update with information about the grants. I think the very short version, and I'll add one piece of it, is we're in the midst of or have completed the process of applying for several different opportunities for federal and private funds to support the work of P20 and to sustain it. For the SLDS grant, you will probably be asked for letters of support sometime in the next few weeks, and we will also give you more information about the scope of the proposal, and if you want to identify that here's something we need in order to facilitate participation in P21, et cetera, this is a very good time to do that. But we're going through these in order to be able to provide the sufficient support to sustain this effort. A very big shout out to Mark French and Ron Babersteria on the screen for getting a successful grant to Institute for Education Sciences. I believe this is the first research grant like this the state's gotten to study the impact of Roberta Willis program. Coral particularly as well put a lot of time into the research methods for that. So that grant was awarded. It has not been publicized, but it is official that OEG is getting this grant sometime very soon. So we'll be in touch about that. And I think that's a huge milestone. So thanks to OEG for kind of taking that up. It took a while, as some of you remember discussing this a year or so ago. So it's great. I think I have the next one. Ron, you had a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank, and kudos to you and your team, Coral. I mean, it's a collaborative effort, and I know this wouldn't have been accomplished without the stuff that you guys put into it. So again, even more credit to you guys. So thank you for the support, and I don't know if Mark wanted to say anything. I kept it short.
I'll just add to Ram's thank yous. You really, the bulk of the work was done by Scott Coral and her folks, and I appreciate all the effort, and teamwork works.
Katie, I'm going to kick it, or we have the data. Yep. I'm going to skip the other updates, and we'll go to Coral and for data dictionary.
Okay.
Office hours. Right,
yeah, so data dictionary, the annual upload that we're starting for the first one this year. So the technical due date is at the end of this month, so the 30th of June. There are 2 more like open data dictionary office hours that I'm holding, one next week and then 2 weeks after that, I think on the 23rd. So if you have any questions, feel free to hop in like anytime during that hour, and I can walk you through anything that you have questions on. You can also feel free to reach out to me at any other time.
Cool, thank you. The next thing up, so learning sessions. So on June 16th, we have our next learning session. It's going to be focused on disclosure avoidance. So we will send out some additional information about that. Scott, I don't know if you want to mention DISC, but they are the folks who will be joining us for that learning session. To be determined for our July learning session, if there are any ideas or topics or anybody you would like to come in, please let us know. And then one last thing, I know we're over time. We will be canceling the July meeting due to the 4th of July weekend. We will have the learning session on the 21st, and then we will resume our data governing board meetings in August. The goal is to have an in-person meeting in September. We will work on getting those details to you far in advance so that you can prepare. And then seeing that, we'd open it to other business, but I know that we are over time. So if there aren't any final thoughts or comments, then we can wrap it up. It is 9:33. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, folks.